It's one thing to have great ideas. It's another to execute on those ideas. Welcome to the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Today we're talking about execution and making your ideas come to life. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Welcome to the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. We are here each week to help you lead more confidently and make a bigger difference, both professionally and personally. This episode is sponsored by Kevin's free weekly e-newsletter, Unleashing Your Remarkable Potential, which is full of articles and resources to help you become a more confident and successful leader. Sign up by going to remarkablepodcast.com/newsletter. And now, here's your host, Kevin.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. So glad that you're here. You probably knew that you're here. You knew that you're here. Yes, of course you knew you were here. I'm glad that you're here. We're going to talk today with a gentleman named Jim Huling. We're going to talk about getting things done. We're going to talk about execution with the guy that knows as much about this as anybody. And his name is Jim Huling. He is a global managing consultant for the 4 disciplines of execution that practice at Franklin Covey. In his role, he's responsible for the 4 disciplines methodology, teaching methods, and the quality of delivery worldwide. He's also regularly leading large-scale engagements in this area, as well as serving as an executive coach to a number of senior executives. His career spans 4 decades of corporate leadership from Fortune 500 organizations to privately held companies, including serving as CEO of a company recognized 4 times as one of the 25 best companies to work for in America. He holds degrees from the University of Alabama and Birmingham Southern College and serves on the boards of several local organizations, as well as the Siegel Institute for Leadership, Ethics, and Character. He's a husband, father of 2, grandfather of 3. He's our guest today. His name is Jim Huling. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. Gosh, what a great introduction. Even I was getting a little interested in what I had to say. So thank you, my friend.
Sometimes when people introduce me, I say thank you for that introduction that my mother wrote, right?
You made my day.
Listen, we're going to talk about this book, The
Awesome.
4 Disciplines of Execution. And especially now, the one that has this little blue stripe across the top that says second edition, revised and updated. But we'll get to all of that. When you were 10 years old, Jim, you probably didn't say, I'm going to be a CEO. You probably didn't say, I'm going to write a best-selling, a #1 Wall Street Journal best-selling book with 2 editions. Like none of that was on your radar when you were 10, I'm guessing. So my question to you is, tell us about your journey. Like sort of quickly, how did you end up where we are today?
Gosh, what a great question. I've only known you a little bit, although as we said a moment ago, we're already friends, but I was expecting today to be full of unique questions, and I love that. So thank you for starting there. And you did emphasize the short version because, I'm an older guy, so I could take all day, to go through this.
That is not the whole purpose. This is not called the Remarkable Journey podcast.
That's right. And Kevin,
although that'd be a good podcast.
You should have a second podcast, Kevin. It'd be that.
I gotta know. My team would say that's a bad idea, Kevin.
I do want to tell you though, man, I am so honored to be on this podcast. I mean, you're world class in the world of podcasts. You're in the top tier, and I feel very special today because I get to have a conversation with you. So thank you. And to go right to your question, I have an answer that you may not be expecting. I actually started my life as an artist. I was a musician. Played in all the rock and roll bands and worked my way basically through college, singing and playing in bands and
getting
got
all the
out
girls.
Well, I don't know. There is a song about that, but I won't quote it on your podcast. But I had a blast, and I literally loved the aspect of expression. I even after I graduated college, I went and lived in New York for a while, pursued a career for a very short time as a professional singer, and then really had a life-changing moment. And the interesting thing is that life-changing moment, I wanted my life to be about something other than just music. I had a very wise professor who said to me once, if you can do anything other than music and be happy, you should do that. because the only people who can survive in the arts, because it's a difficult and challenging career, are the people for whom there is nothing else. So I made a change, went into business. I got into what was in those days the emerging field of computer science. Can you imagine? Went back to school, got another degree in computer science, and went on to start what really turned out to be a 43-year career in business, working my way up through the IT ranks. I became CIO of a couple of world-class companies, huge corporations. I ended up being CEO of a technology company for 11 years. And then I had another life-changing moment, which really was, in a way, full circle. Because I realized after 11 years of being a CEO that really wasn't what I wanted to do. What I really wanted to do was communicate. I wanted to have a message. I wanted to make a difference in the lives of people. And Kevin, I realized, you can make a difference in the lives of people in all professions. I'm not saying that that's the exclusive territory of writers and speakers, but I really wanted to be doing, well, in a sense, what we're doing today, sharing ideas about things that really matter and finding a way to be helpful to people in the living of their lives. So the end of that story is the greatest professional moment of my life. I had the opportunity to join the Franklin Covey organization, which I had long been a fan of because of the work of Dr. Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that he had really done what I aspired to do and still aspire. I haven't made it yet, Kevin. And now finishing 13 years with the Franklin Covey organization, and not finished yet. I shouldn't have said that, but this is my 13th year.
I don't think anyone heard it that way, but that's fair to clarify. I want to say something, Jim, and as people listen, I realize that most people are listening and not watching, and if you're watching, hi. But
or if you're driving, don't be watching.
If you're driving, please don't be watching. Why do we have 12-inch laptop screens in cars? I don't think that's necessary.
Night, though.
But anyway, you said I like to sometimes stop and highlight something because I know that people are doing lots of different things when they're listening. And you said something a little bit ago that I thought was marvelous. And this is also not the Remarkable Parenting podcast, but you said something that one of your professors said to you that I think that many times parents struggle with. Mm-hmm. They have a child that wants to do something that perhaps doesn't look like the odds are all that high about, right? This happened to be in the arts. And I love the way this mentor framed it for you. Would you just say it again to kind of underline it for everybody? Because I think it's really powerful.
I love this. I'm so glad we're going to talk about this for a second, because this is a precursor to the execution things that we'll talk about in a little while. But my professor was Dr. Hugh Thomas at Birmingham Southern College, where I was a music major. It was a conservatory school. And I was part of a group of people studying music with the intention to be professional musicians. And I'd never forget it. I have chills on my arm right now, remembering this moment when he said to a small group of us who were very serious about this, that if you can do anything else and be happy and fulfilled and content, you should do that, because the only people who seem to be able to endure in the arts are those for whom there is nothing else. And Kevin, if you don't mind, I'll tag on to the end of that really quickly, that I think that is not an exclusive statement to the arts.
No, I don't think so either.
Don't you think that's right?
I wanted you to go back.
Yeah, the only people who should be doctors are the people for whom there's nothing but healing. That's all I think about. That's all I care about. The people who should be therapists and counselors and business people are those for whom, at least that is the driving pull in their life to go to that. Because anything else, dabbling in anything else, can I say this as though I really was an authority, even though I'm not, is number one, if you dabble your way through life, you're never going to be happy. Never going to be completely happy. And second, you're probably never going to do anything of great significance. So why not find the thing for yourself that is your thing? The thing that makes you want to get up in the morning and do it. That thing. That would be a message, wouldn't it, from you and me to everybody?
Perhaps you never would reach your wildly important goals? Perhaps.
That's right.
Okay. Just saying.
Very nice.
So this book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, it's been out for a number of years. And as I said, now you're out touring the world of podcasts, talking about it, because we're in the second edition. I don't have any books that have a second edition, so I got a lot to learn. here, but I want to ask you this question. So it's been, I don't remember now when the first, I should have done my homework, gone over to my
11 years ago.
Thank you. I should have gone over here and looked at the original copyright. What do you think has led to the success of this book?
Yeah, I love this question, and I feel my answer now not just coming from my mind, but maybe coming from my heart as well. Kevin, I think everybody struggles with execution. You know, our first edition and second edition are really written with a predominant thought of leaders of teams, mostly in the business or nonprofit segment. But, you know, the principles apply to our personal lives. They apply to our parenting. They apply to everything we try to do. So they are powerful in that sense. But to come back to your question, I think everybody struggles with it. You know, there's a reason that New Year's resolutions are a cliche. You tell somebody your New Year's resolution, and they roll their eyes and say, "Is it February yet?" You know?
Yeah, talk to me on the 20th of January. Exactly.
Yeah, right. We have a long history of this. So in other words, this book, both the original and even better in the new one, provides what we believe is the best answer we know to why is that and how do I change it.
So, okay, so now I have to ask a question. You challenged me to ask questions no one asked you. So I almost chuckled when I said we're going to talk to an expert on execution because, you know, there's a whole nother definition of execution. Why did you pick execution instead of implementation? Because I find myself using the word implementation because I sometimes get stuck on that word execution.
Yeah.
Is there a
Great
reason?
question.
I'm just curious.
Great question.
Obviously, nothing wrong with the word execution.
Oh, no, of course not.
If there was a conscious choice there, one or the other.
Well, I think there was. And I'll do my best to express it. But do you mind 10 seconds to tell you one of my favorite examples is I gave a keynote speech on the 4 disciplines in Bogota, Colombia. And the billboard outside the stadium where I was going to be speaking said Jim Huling, Chief Executioner. True story, hand to heart, true story, Chief Executioner. So there have been times when I wondered about this name, but I'll tell you what I like about this. If, for example, we said disciplines, not principles, ideas, practices, and we said execution, not just dabbling. You know, I think it's an edgier word, a stronger word that you go out and you do it. And not to say that as a heavy thing for people hearing us, but to say, our book from page 1 to page 311 is all about getting things done. There's not much fluff in there, and there's not much philosophy in there. It's hard-edged advice about how to make the things that matter most to you come true in your life or with your team or in your business.
Yeah, I absolutely love the word disciplines, and I bet that you know this, that the root word of discipline is learning.
Yes, sir.
Under the word disci, discipline, disciple, learn.
Right.
I love that. Yeah. So the 4 disciplines of execution, there are only two kinds of people that are listening to us, Jim, those who have read the book and those that haven't. So we're going to talk about what's in.
Right? Is that a scientific fact, what you just said?
That is a scientific fact.
That's awesome.
Now, I also know as an author that there are a bunch of people that have it that didn't read it, but we won't talk about that right now. What I want to do is 2 things. I want first for you to tell us about the 4 disciplines briefly, of course, but then I want to talk about what you changed or what's different. So, but first, real quickly, for people that haven't, or for people that have slept since they read it, what are the 4 disciplines?
You must know me well because you've emphasized 3 times briefly, and I have a history of long answers, so I'm going to actually be true to what you've asked me to do. So there are 4 of these things. They're easy to remember, and for everybody, if you're pausing for a moment, you want to write these down. I'm going to give you a simple way to catch these 4 ideas. I still would like for you to buy the book if you don't mind. I have grandchildren that are going to college and all that, but I give you the 4 ideas. It'll only take a second. So the 4 disciplines of execution are based on 4 universal, timeless principles. Number 1 is focus. So the very first discipline is to focus on the wildly important. And Kevin, I know that's a cheesy name. I've often regretted it myself, but you know, it gets in the brain. It gets people's attention. And the reason we chose that name is because everything you and I think we're doing right now, we think it's all important. So in order to separate out the thing that matters most, we had to call it something different. So wildly important. So here's an idea that will hold in the mind better than my words. Imagine every single person listening to this is really like an air traffic controller. And whether you're driving your car or you're at work or you're at home making breakfast, you're listening to this podcast, I promise you, you have 100 planes circling your brain right now. There's 10 things your kids need. There's 2 things your spouse needs. You've got stuff to do at work. You've got stuff to do at home. You got things you're trying to remember and not forget, but you don't have time to write them down. It's like airplanes are everywhere, right? So how do you ever get any of those things to happen? Well, the principle of discipline 1 is to separate out the plane that most needs to land now, right? We can't land them all. There are times in the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport, I've thought that's what was going on when I've looked out the plane window, but it actually wouldn't work, right? We can only really land one plane at a time with real excellence. And believe me, if you were on that plane, you'd want it to be landed with excellence. So discipline 1.
I'd rather wait.
Yes. Take your time. So discipline 1 is to identify the one thing you want to do with real excellence that matters most and separate it out from the other 99 planes. Now, just for the record, Kevin, I can't help you with the other 99 planes. That's a different book. There's lots of ways to deal with that. What I want you to be able to do is to know that whatever you've chosen, you are going to do. So separate it out. That's discipline 1. That's the discipline of focus. Discipline 2 is the discipline of leverage. I spent most of my life looking for this discipline, Kevin, and I had to have my friend Chris McChesney help me to find it. Discipline 2 says that no matter what goal you've chosen, there are a few human actions that will have more impact on it than all the rest, right? So in a very real sense, it's about saying, now that I've chosen the goal, what are the 1 or 2 things I could do with consistency and excellence that would have the biggest impact on the goal, right? It is what in a very real sense, the 20%, or heck, maybe it's 5%. I don't know, but it's the few things.
If you take the 20, 80, and then you take 80 of the 20, you got
exactly. I'm right with you. I'm right with you. And believe it or not, that's really been the key to all the success we've had around the world. 300,000 organizations are using this process today. And a big reason is because they finally got this, that I don't have to work harder. I just have to get a lot smarter. I have to know the few things that produce the biggest results. That's why we call discipline 2 the discipline of leverage. Like if you had a pole and you were able to move a big rock, it's that idea. Small movement creates big results. So that's discipline 2. 1 was focus, 2 was leverage. 3, the one that's often missed, and my personal favorite, I have to admit it right here on a national podcast, is the discipline of engagement. So in other words, discipline 3 is about how you keep score. It's about feeling like you are playing a winnable game. Like achieving this goal could actually be fun. It's not just all grinded out work, right? And it turns out the key to that is how you track your progress. So in other words, if you build what we call a compelling scoreboard, then you will have way more rocket fuel in your engine to pursue discipline 1 and 2 than you would have any other way. And this applies now if you've got a team of people building a scoreboard that they rally around and say, hey, that's our board. This is our game we're playing. Or whether it's something that you put on the refrigerator at home and you're marking the days when you stayed on your nutrition plan or you got your 10,000 steps in, doesn't matter. The ability of that visual display to compel you to want to play to win is the power of discipline 3. Discipline 3, keep a compelling scoreboard. And the big one, Kevin, is discipline 4. Discipline 4, without any question, the most important discipline. In fact, 1, 2, and 3 are sort of how you set up a game. Discipline 4 is how you play the game. Discipline 4 is the discipline of accountability. And Kevin, what it really means is I need to find a way to make myself personally accountable for my weekly progress. Now, if I'm in a team, I do that by going around the circle and everybody's saying, well, here's what I'm going to do this week, and here's what I'm going to do this week. And a week later, we all say to each other, I said I would do it, and I did it, or I said I would do it, and I didn't. But either way, we become accountable to each other. If I'm at home, I need a buddy. I need to be able to call you, Kevin, and say, hey, can I have 10 minutes every Friday morning? And all I'm going to do is tell you whether I kept my commitment or I didn't. But I need to know Sunday through Thursday that I have to call you Friday morning. If I didn't do it, I don't want to tell you I didn't do it. I need a way to make myself accountable. So that's discipline 4. The discipline.
And by the way, you're not going to do that more than about 2 weeks in a row. So even if you miss it one, you're not going to miss it the next one.
I'm not, and you're not going to make it easy either, are you? If I've chosen the right person, you're going to say, "Oh, Jim, I thought you were serious." Not if I'm a good friend or a good coach. Yeah, I'm not. And you coach folks, and I coach folks, yes, and that's half of the value, maybe 3/4 of the value right there. It's not the wise stuff we say. It might be the questions we ask. It's mostly, so how did it go since last week? Did you have that tough conversation? That's right.
Did you implement that strategy you said you were going to implement? Right. That's what it all comes down to.
And Kevin, if you don't mind, I'll slip in there and say, and we try to avoid that kind of accountability, and it's actually the secret to almost everything we want in life. And a quick story on that: I'm 8 years into CrossFit. I just love CrossFit. I'm not going to talk about it much today, but yesterday, my CrossFit coach saw me casually rowing the rower, which is not something we do in CrossFit. And as he walked by, he said, "I had no idea you were so comfortable with mediocrity." Just like that, right? Well, now some people would say, "Oh, I don't want that." I loved it, because all of a sudden, what do you think I did? I started giving my best. I rode harder, right? So that accountability brings out the best in us, but we've got to learn to see it as an enabler of excellence rather than a punitive or a punishment kind of process.
I often say to people that accountability is the longest 4-letter word in the dictionary. Like, people seem to think it's like this bad thing. And because as leaders, we say, well, I have to hold them accountable. I don't want to hold them accountable. I say, no, what you need to do is help them be accountable. What you're talking about and what the book talks about is how to help people be accountable, to see the value so that they're ready for that. And we're doing that together.
I mean, that what you just said is powerful. The accountability that's outside in, that's all your authority imposed upon me. I don't want to disillusion anybody listening to us today, but that's really the smallest tool in your toolbox. It's not very effective. But the accountability that's inside out, that comes from the fact that I want to get better. I want to do a good job. And in the language of 40X, I want to win. That kind of accountability. Every champion, every person who's done something great in the world, every person who's reached the best level they were capable of, they had that inside out kind of accountability.
So as we're having this conversation, no one else is going to hear this for a while, but what just happened in our world as we're having this conversation in late May is that Phil Mickelson won a major at age 50. No one held him accountable to that. Simone Biles just did this amazing thing, jumping.
And nobody's ever done before.
No one held her to that accountability.
Right. In fact, let's go further.
Someone helped both of them.
Yeah, and if somebody had said to Phil Mickelson, "You have to win this year," it wouldn't have had the same effect as him saying, "I'm going to win this year." Yeah, that's the difference.
All right, so you wrote this book, sold a bunch of copies, 300,000 companies using it, and then you updated it. So give me, what did you change?
Yeah. Great question. So first of all, for context for your listeners, from point A to point B is about 10 years. And in those 10 years, we weren't sitting back counting how many copies, left Amazon every single day. We were out implementing this process all over the world with all those companies that you just mentioned. So we had the chance to learn firsthand, shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart with leaders around the world in some of the world's greatest companies, using the process, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work, seeing what was clear from the book, what wasn't clear, what we thought was clear, but it sure wasn't, and then we began also to learn something we didn't know. And this brings me to the answer to your question. What's really different in the second edition? First of all, we've tightened up the writing a little bit. We got a lot better at writing in the 10 years, but what's really there that wasn't there before is this emphasis on leaders of leaders. Now, I just give you a tiny context. The first edition was predominantly written towards the leader of a frontline team. So, those wonderful individuals, whether it's a team of 5 or 500, that everybody who reports to you is basically an individual contributor. So that's the first book. In the second edition, we kept all of that, but we added 30% new content, all directed toward People who have that unique job, and I saw this on your face, Kevin, you know what I'm talking about. The leading of leaders is an entirely different discipline. And even though there are 80 million books on leadership in the world, there really aren't any that we know of about leading leaders. That's a unique skill. So that's what we added in. We kept everything from the first, but we added in this 30% section on leaders of leaders. What do they do to help people achieve great results?
I love that. So you maybe kind of answered this a little.
Okay.
4 disciplines. Well, you told us what your favorite is. And oftentimes authors don't want to do that. They'll say, well, they're all my children, blah, blah. But you picked your favorite. I love that. Engagement. The third one, compelling scorecard. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But which of the 4 across all of the experience over all those years are people doing the poorest or least consistently?
Yeah, and I think you are not going to believe this, except that I hope you trust in me to tell the truth. Do you know it's discipline 1? Do you know everybody in the world thinks they're focused? And sometimes focus is just a pseudonym for busy, right? I'm so focused these days. I can't believe how focused I am. I focused on 37 things today, Well, if you focused on 37 things today, you really didn't focus on any of them. You may have touched 37 points throughout the end of your day, but you didn't give any of them the very best you had or the quality time needed to get to a level of depth or excellence. So you may think you did, but you didn't. And I bet we could do a podcast, we won't today, on multitasking. Multitasking is the greatest lie ever told.
It's a myth. We don't have to have a conversation about that because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't, but people think it does. They think I can be reviewing a report, listening to a phone call, eating a cheeseburger, driving my car all at the same time. And I got it. I got them all handled. And it's just not true. So
hold on, stop right there, Jim. So a lot of you who are listening right now are listening to us while you're doing something else, and that's fine. But the most you're going to get from this, the very most, is 70% of it.
Oh, you're so optimistic. Yeah, what a kind guy you are.
I mean, the research says the very best you can do at any 2 things is 70% of each. Yeah. Varies widely. So the very, very, very best you could possibly do. And if you're a woman, the odds are you might do it a little better than a man. That's what the research says. But the reality is, if 70% is good enough, you go for it.
And if you move that to 3 things, you're probably down in the 25% effectiveness level. So I'll tell you something I believe with all my heart, and I don't mean offense to anybody. Habitual multitaskers, to me, are great candidates for mediocrity. That's really what you're saying is if you're going to try to do 5 things at once and call that focus, if you feel you have to do that, then you have to do what you think you have to do, but you're never going to do your best at any one of those 5 things or even any one of those 3 things. So believe it or not, focus is the one that people struggle with the most. And part of the reason is they think they're already doing it. They're like, hey, well, Jim, we can skip this one. Can you go right to discipline 2? Because we got this focus. We have 25 goals here for our team.
Which means you don't have it. Right?
You got
25, you got 0.
Exactly.
Man, I might have to have you back, Jim, sometime. But I got to ask, is there something that we didn't talk about that you wish we would have, or thought I'd have asked, or wish I would have asked?
Well, I'll say it, and I don't need to apologize with you, but it's a little bit philosophical, which is simply to say, I've been in leadership a long time. I've been a leader of leaders for a long time. I've done it well sometimes and not well at other times, but I've come to the conclusion that the vast majority of the leaders in the world are leading almost exclusively from their authority and from their mind. In other words, if I can be really clear about what I want you to do, and I can make sure there are consequences if you don't do it, that's leadership. And that's really what goes for leadership all around the world. And I just want to tell everybody, if that's what you're doing, you're only tapping 30% of a human's potential, because the other 70% doesn't come from the mind, it comes from the heart. And so keep your authority, keep your clarity, but add to it a sense of purpose. Add to it the sense that you actually care about them as individuals, not as product producing, machines, and give people a sense that they're part of something that matters. And you'll get both the mind and the heart. You'll get a set of results you wouldn't even imagine, But to do that, you have to engage. You have to be a little vulnerable. You have to be authentic. You have to have some empathy for the human beings who are following your leadership. If you do it, I promise you, it's worth it. That's the one thing we didn't say that I'm glad you gave me a chance to say.
It is so worth it. Leadership is not a power grab. You try to grab it, you'll have less and less of it trying to squeeze onto water.
Exactly.
You got it, man. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So you told us CrossFit already. We know that you're a musician, at least you once were. What do you do? What else do you do for fun besides CrossFit? What else do you do for fun?
Yeah, it's the old joke is CrossFit people only want to talk about CrossFit, but I have lots of other things in my life. You know, I'm at the moment I'm building a digital course to help people find the work they were meant to do in their lives, and I'll come out later this summer. It's just a side project, and it's just a thing I'm doing to try to have an impact on the world. You know, and I have my sweetheart of 40 years, still enjoying every single day, lots more time at home than we were before, and loving every minute of that. And I've got, of course, 2 kids and 3 great grandkids, and my life is incredibly rich and full. So I thank you with that. And the one thing I didn't talk about really was about I love to read. I'm an avid reader. You and I were talking about this a moment ago. So when I'm not on a podcast and when I'm not working for Franklin Covey or with my family, the only other thing you'll probably find me doing is sitting on the back porch of my house reading another book and trying to raise my own game and open my mind. Yeah.
All right. So tell us something you're reading.
Thank you for saying that. We were just having a little conversation about that before, and I am right now. I'm rereading a book that I've read 10 times. I want to tell you that, and I'm reading a new book that I've never read before. So the book I'm rereading, I've read 10 times, is a book called The Alchemist. I feel certain that you've heard of it. Kevin, I've almost bankrupted myself giving away copies of The Alchemist to people.
I'm way behind. I've only read it twice.
It's life-changing. It's an allegory. It's a story that teaches. So if you don't like that kind of book, this is not for you. But the depth of those teaching moments in that book, I just think they're simply profound. And so I encourage everybody to take a look at that. And then the other book that I'm reading now that I started and didn't finish, and now I've come back to finishing it, but because I had to stop to absorb it, is a book called Atomic Habits. I hope you've heard of it. I think James Clear is just one of the most incredible voices in the world today. And even though he writes about things that are very similar to ours, his book and our book are very harmonious. You know, ours is sort of the organizational version. His is sort of the personal version. But I think this guy's brilliant. And the simplicity, he makes everything so simple. So if you're looking for a companion book, maybe to 4 Disciplines, I think Atomic Habits is a wonderful. It's one of my favorite books of all time I'm reading right now. And I don't know if you mind me mentioning this. I hope you don't. I have read about 3 books a month for the last 41 years, literally. I actually have a list of all the books I've ever read. And people ask me all the time, Kevin, what are the books that have impacted you the most? And if you don't mind, I have a document. I have a list of the 16 that have impacted me the most. May I give it to you? And anybody who's interested in it, you could maybe make it available to them.
Yeah, we talked about this before I hit the record button, and we're going to put that on you're going to give it to me, and then we're going to have it in the show notes here. So wherever you're listening, you can go find the show notes, or you can go to remarkablepodcast.com.
Beautiful. And
you can go find this episode, and then you can watch us a second time if you want to. But we'll have the link to that there, as well as the link to The Alchemist, Atomic Habits, and the 4 Disciplines.
Wow. Thank you.
Execution.
Wow. What an awesome podcast.
Where do you want to point people? I'll hold the book up, but where do you want to point people? How can people learn more about you, connect with you? What do you want to tell people?
Absolutely. 2 things real fast. 4dxbook.com, 4davidxraybook.com. That's Franklin Covey's place for all things about the 4DX book. Please go there. Lots of videos, lots of testimonials. You will see my partner, Chris McChesney, who's a far better speaker than I am. So you'll get a chance to see a real professional there as well. I hope you do. And then if you have any interest in me and the things that I'm involved in 4 Disciplines and beyond, jimhuling.com, jimhuling.com. Easy to remember, I hope. And by the way, I'm on every social media platform in the world. And just about every day, I put out a thought about leadership or about life that I hope in some small way makes a difference. And so if you follow me on any social media, I'm on all of them. Almost every single day, you'll see at least a little thought from me, and check them out and let me know what you think.
All right. Jim, thanks. Don't go quite yet, everybody. But I have a question now. I'm done asking questions of Jim. I got a question for all of you. If you've been here before, you know what question I'm going to ask you. Are you ready? Now what? What are you going to do? What action are you going to take as a result of this? Because at the end of the day, well, if you've enjoyed the last 30 plus minutes as much as I have, then you've been entertained. But you didn't come to be entertained. You came hopefully to be edified. But edification doesn't end with the information.
That's right.
It ends with the application. And so your task now is to say, what did I get? Maybe I need to go back and think about the fact that I'm doing too much multitasking. Maybe you need to go back and say, where is the leverage for me and my team? Maybe you need to go back and think a little bit more about accountability, maybe in a more helpful way for you. Maybe you need to find someone to help you be more accountable. There's plenty of things, plenty of nuggets that you could take from this as a parent, as an individual, as a leader, as a human being. The challenge is to take some action. So I'll leave you with that question I ask you every week, and that is, now what? Jim, thank you for being here. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, my friend. And do you mind if I just say real fast, I'm on a lot of podcasts. You are amazing. You ask insightful questions. You keep things moving. I mean, this has got to be one of the top podcasts in the world. And I'm so privileged to have been on it today, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate that and very much. And if you are someone who listens to this podcast and you agree even halfway with Jim, tell somebody else. Go give it 5 stars wherever you happen to listen. We'd love to have you do that. And let me just close by telling you all that this episode was brought to you today by Remarkable Masterclasses. Each month we release a new skill in an advanced form of a masterclass designed to help you become the remarkable leader and human you were born to be. You can get all the details on how to get on board with a specific course or get discounts every month by going to remarkablemasterclass.com. And we'll be here next week, as we are every week, with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. I hope you'll join us then. Thanks.